Hello and welcome back to the Millie Fox Show. This is a podcast for the woman who has done everything that she felt that she was supposed to do. A high achiever like yourself who checked off all of the checklist and yet is looking around at her life and wondering why it doesn't feel exactly how she thought it would feel. And maybe for the woman who's not exactly showing up in her life the way that she actually wants to show up as her whole self, as her true imperfect self. And so what we talk about on this podcast is how to pop that pressure bubble, how to take off the shackles of overthinking and perfectionism. And we discuss that through a variety of different methods. Maybe it's spirituality, maybe it's something psychological, maybe it's just a story. So today I'm going to tell you something that I think you really need to hear. Last week on the podcast, I spoke about the only secret that really truly exists to get more of what you want. And before I went into that, I talked about having healing as an identity, right? And feeling like you are a DIY fix-it project. And it was funny, the timing of the episode, because after the episode, I was talking with my coach, one of my coaches, my emotional strengthening coach, in fact, about something that I need to look at in my own journey and some healing that's happening. And I was processing the whole thing, right? Because you don't want healing to be your identity, and yet sometimes healing is really required. And what I landed on, I want to share with you because I think it's going to be a really helpful perspective and reframe for wherever you're at on your journey. So when you have a wound, nobody can heal that wound for you, right? You can't even really heal the wound for yourself. Healing happens under the right conditions, right? Under the optimal conditions when the body has everything it needs to heal. However, we tend to the wound, right? When we perform first aid, we have to tend to a wound, or when we are allowing the body to do its healing process, we aid the body in the conditions it needs for that wound to heal quicker and in a better way, maybe to reduce the scarring, right? We'll put antibiotic ointment on it and we'll change the dressing and we'll make sure it doesn't stay wet, or when it's fresh, we don't want fresh scars to be out in the sun because they'll deepen and darken. So I was thinking about this concept when it comes to our emotions and how even if in the past we have really made healing an identity, we don't want to ignore tending to our wounds, right? And it really doesn't even have to be that intense, doesn't even have to be that deep, because maybe the things that we're dealing with emotionally aren't even something we want to call wounds, right? But there are things that we need to tend to within ourselves. And I want to share a bit more of my story and process here, because I shared a couple of episodes ago, it was episode 7, of the process that I went through for deciding to end my marriage. And after that happened about 3 years ago, I basically was so excited to move on and to live a new life that I didn't tend to the emotional side of what I had gone through and what I had been through in the marriage and everything like that. I went through therapy, don't get me wrong, I had coaches, but I didn't really talk about what I'd been through in that area of my life. I was talking about what I was navigating currently. And I have talked to a few people about this over the years, and more recently, I've had a couple people reflect back to me that they think that I need to tend to this part of what I've been through not using those words. I'm using my own words now because this is the way that it's sitting with me. And I was resistant to it, right? Like I just want that to be in the past now. I think a lot of people might feel that way about things that they've been through, that they don't want to dredge it up. They don't want to make it a part of their identity. They, don't want to feel the feelings associated with the thing that they've been through, right? And they're tired of talking about it. I have been through so much in the last 3 years, and I've had to talk about it a lot. But just because you're talking about it doesn't mean that you're addressing the emotional aspect of it. And that's been me. So I have listened, and in speaking to my emotional strengthening coach, I speak to her, and then I give myself time to sit with her suggestions. And I came back to her and I said, you know what? I've realized something. Just because something needs tending to doesn't mean that all of a sudden I'm going back into healing as an identity. And it doesn't mean that I am being the victim or playing the victim. It's simply a form of self-care. And I've been wanting to say this entire time on this recording, but the question that is the absolute most important here for us to ask ourselves, and also goes with the idea from last week's episode about focusing on what you want, not what you don't want, right? I think that was the resistance that I had, was if I'm talking about my feelings and what's happened, I'm focusing on things I don't want to create more of. But what I do want to create more of is a version of me that's tuned into what I need and tends to those needs. So that is the question. That is the most self-compassionate question. It is such an important question for us to have in the back of our mind, is what do I need? What do I need? And what parts of us need tending to? So when you're thinking about who you want to be, there's always this question of what is your next level self, and how does she act, and what does she do? What does she prioritize, right? But there's also the question that is very, very important, is what does she need to be able to be that woman? Because otherwise, you are just creating another checklist for yourself to measure up to, if you're not considering all of the parts of you that are involved in you, air quotes, being her now. I want you to sit with this question. What do I need? What parts of me need tending to? Where have I been avoiding tending to myself because I'm telling myself a story that I don't want to focus on that, and I don't want to be the victim, and I don't want to, dredge up those old things again. We can do that while focusing on what we want more of. I know what I want more of. I want to be at peace. I want to feel confident in the way I navigate any kind of conflict. I want to just be unbothered. I don't want to have, oh, and look at that. See, it's easy. It's so easy. I caught myself right in the moment, and you'll catch yourself too when you ask yourself this question. When you ask yourself, what do I need? Do you answer with, well, I don't want the. Or do you think of what you do want instead? So this is kind of a follow-up episode to last week, because it's funny. I almost felt it was a contradiction, because when last week I was saying, sometimes you just got to live your life and focus on what you want, right? And that's what I have been doing. But now I'm here saying sometimes we need to heal. Sometimes it's not about looking back, right? Where there's the away wall and the towards wall. And if we are looking back, we're focusing on what we're moving away from. And if we're looking forward, we're focusing on the towards wall, right? This is something else that I brought up with my emotional strengthening coach, was this concept that the past is malleable. And looking at the past is not necessarily about looking at what we're running from or ruminating. We can change our perception of the past to focus more on what we wanted to take away from the past. So again, shifting towards a focus of what we want. So instead of looking back and saying, this happened to me and it hurt, we can say that. There's nothing wrong with saying it. But then we can say, this is what happened, and here's where I grew. And here's where I was the hero. And here's where I'm proud of myself. And here's where I demonstrated the qualities that I want to bring more of into the future. So if the past creates the future, and we can change our perception of the future by changing our perspective of the past, that is very powerful. And that also is part of answering the question, what do I need? Because we are looking back and asking, what do I need from this experience? What do I need to take away from this experience? What learnings do I have? What value is here that I want? What in the past is valuable to me that gives me more of what I want? And there's so much power in that. And this is a shorty episode today. I hope it gives you value. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, please share, please tag me if you feel so called to post about it on social media at Millie Fox, MILLIFOX. And make sure to come over, say hey, and grab one of the resources at the link in my bio. I've got some really good stuff in the works that I'm creating. So come stick around and keep your eye out. And sending you so much love. Thank you for being here yet again. Episodes come out every Friday. Bye for now.